The Supreme Court, saying the court should reject the Biden administration's position. The spokesperson for Job Creators Network is Elaine Parker. And Elaine, what is the Biden DOJ, Department of Justice, arguing before the Supreme Court regarding Joe Biden's proposal to forgive student loan debt?
The Biden administration has argued all along that they are given the authority under the HEROES Act, which was a law that was passed in 2003 after the 9/11 attacks. And it was solely to help our men and women who were fighting overseas and to give them some relief from their student loan payments. And the Biden administration claims that that act allows them to forgive almost $500 billion worth of student loans for people who are not fighting overseas, but everyday ordinary Americans who decided to go to college and take student loans. And so we're pushing back. We filed in October, and in November, a lower court judge found that the program was unconstitutional and vacated the entire program, thus blocking it on a national basis. The Fifth Circuit denied an appeal by the DOJ, and now they have filed to the Supreme Court. And today we did get news that the Supreme Court is going to accept the case and hear arguments in February of 23.
So I think your court filing is in addition to some state attorney generals who have also filed. Is that correct? How does your filing comport with what some of these state attorney generals are arguing?
So these are two separate cases, and they will be heard separately when we get to the Supreme Court. Both heard in February, but heard separately. They're very different cases, and so we're looking forward to having the court rule on the merits of our case.
And I think you're asking for the court to rule on the merits of loan forgiveness rather than the procedure of the loan forgiveness. Am I understanding that correctly?
So the court's going to look at actually both of those issues. Our case centers around two plaintiffs that both have loans and that they were basically denied their right to have their voices heard through the Administrative Procedures Act, the notice and comment process that all regulatory agencies are required to go through. And the Biden administration claims that under the HEROES Act, they weren't required to go through through that process. And what really happened is that the Biden administration went into a back room and they arbitrarily came up with a rule and decided who was in and who was out. And some people were getting this much and some people were getting nothing. And so we're calling them out on obviously the regulatory process, but we don't believe that the HEROES Act even gives them the authority to forgive $500 billion in student loans. And so the merits of the case will also rest on whether or not the HEROES Act gives them any authority at all.
How does the government's overreach, as you've mentioned, this being overreach, affect everyday business owners? Because after all, I think that is who Job Creators Network represents, about 30 million or so small business owners who are working across the country. How does government overreach, how does this type of overreach potentially affect businesses on Main Street?
Well, you know, all Americans right now are facing some of the highest inflation that we've seen in 40 years. We have labor supply issues, we have supply chain issues, we have high gas prices, and all of this is a function of the policies of the Biden administration and the excessive and reckless spending that we have seen. This would infuse another $500 billion into an economy that does not need it spent at this point. And so we're pushing back to protect Main Street. We're pushing back on the government overreach. And the reality, John, is that if this program is allowed to go forward, it will provide a blank check to the executive branch for this president, not only for this president, but for every future president in the coming years without any input from Congress or participation from the American public.
Elaine Parker, spokesperson for the Job Creators Network Foundation. Job Creators Network Foundation looks like their legal arm is going to the Supreme Court over this issue of student loan forgiveness. Thank you, Elaine Parker, for talking to us on One American News.